Alright, so let's start in your textbook pages on 134. 134. We're looking at the levels of cellular organization. And so there's a few things that we need to annotate or take note of. It says, how are living things organized? It tells us that an organism is a living thing that can carry out life processes by itself. If you look back in your journal on page 5, there were 7 characteristics of things that were classified living. We compared living and non-living. And so if something is an organism, it has to be able to do all 7 of those characteristics. So there are organisms that exist as single cells, and there are organisms that are composed of many billions of cells. So when we talk about cells, reminder, we said they were the basic unit of life. Unicellular organisms are made up of just one cell that performs all of those life functions. Unicellular organisms do not have levels of organization because they only have one cell. Now that has advantages and disadvantages. For example, unicellular organisms need fewer resources, and they can live in harsh conditions such as hot springs and salty water and extreme hot and extreme cold. Your archaebacteria, remember, can live in the Arctic area. We would say that is an advantage. An advantage. Now, a disadvantage of being unicellular is that the entire organism dies if a single cell dies. You and I are multicellular, so we lose cells every day and it doesn't kill us. But if you only have one cell and that one cell dies, that whole organism is dead. Multicellular organisms are made up of more than one cell. That's how we know they're multicellular. These cells are grouped into different levels of organization, which include tissues, organs, and organ systems. The cells that make up a multicellular organism, such as humans and plants, may be specialized to perform specific functions. Okay? Skip on down. The disadvantages to being multicellular are that multicellular organisms need more resources than unicellular organisms, and the cells of multicellular organisms are specialized for certain jobs, which means cells must depend on each other. They can't do it all themselves. Those specialized cells take care of it, so other cells aren't able to do those things. Okay, turning over to page 135. Tissues. A tissue is a group of similar cells that perform a common function. Humans and many other animals are made up of 4 basic types of tissue. We got nervous tissue, epithelial tissue, connective tissue, and muscle tissue. Each of those does a specific function or a specific job. Plants also have tissues, and there are 3 types of tissues in plants. Their specific functions are transport, protective, and ground. Okay? On to page 136. Organs are a structure that is made up of a collection of 2 or more tissues that carry out a specialized function, and that is called an organ. An example is your stomach. Your stomach is an organ that breaks down food for digestion. Different types of tissues working together to accomplish this function is what makes an organ. For example, the nervous tissue sends messages to the muscle tissue to tell the muscle tissue to contract. When that muscle tissue contracts, the food and the stomach acids are mixed together and the food breaks down. So we've got different types of tissues that work together to make an organ. You might not realize it, but plants also have organs, and they're made up of different tissues working together also. For an example, a leaf is an organ that provides protective tissue. It contains protective tissue to reduce water loss, and ground tissue for photosynthesis, and transport tissue to distribute nutrients from the leaves to the stems. Stems and roots are also organs that function to transport and store water and nutrients in a plant. And on page 137 here we have an example of the digestive system. We've got our stomach muscle cell. We have a group of similar cells that make a tissue, and then we have a group of tissues that form an organ. Now, organ systems. An organ system is a group of 2 or more organs that work together to perform body functions. Each organ system has a specific job to do for that organism. For example, the stomach works with other organs of the digestive system to digest and absorb nutrients from food. Other organs included in the digestive system are the esophagus and the small intestine. Now, they didn't give us this one, but I want you to write it down. An organism is a group of 2 or more organ systems working together. So we have 5 levels so far, and I'm going to compare those to a little toy that I have, okay? If you've ever seen nesting dolls, they're usually like a little girl, but mine are animals from sea life. So this would be Free Willy. This would be the whole organism. And that whole organism is made up of a group of organ systems. And this organ system is made up of a group of organs. And the organs are made up of a group of tissues. And the tissues are made up of a group of cells. Okay, so this is the simplest or the least complex. We have the cell. If we have a group of cells working together, then that is going to form a tissue. If we have a group of tissues working together, they don't have to be the same, they can be different tissues, but they're working together, and that is going to form an organ. And if you have a group of organs working together for a specific function, that's going to form an organ system. And a group of organ systems working together is going to form a complete organism, a multicellular organism. Okay? So, in our notes, we're going to recreate a pyramid on page 22, levels of cellular organization, and we're going to go from the least complex, which is the cell, to the most complex, which is the organism. So we have cells. A group of cells is called a tissue. A group of tissues is called an organ. A group of organs forms an organ system. And group of organ systems forms an entire organism. We said that you could have a unicellular organism, which is made of one cell that performs all of the life functions. An example would be like an amoeba or a yeast. Or you could have a multicellular organism, which is made up of more than one cell that performs all of those life functions. Example would be a human, a plant, a cow, okay? So those are the levels of organization.